Namaste, and welcome to Yoga Today. We're going to be talking about forgiveness, something that I think most devotees on the path revisit on a regular basis. It's such an important part of the spiritual path. And for each one of us, we are entitled in this life to live a life of connection with your own soul, the spirit within you, who you truly are. But for many of us, we don't do that. And we learn how to do it slowly, over time, and very often just by cause and effect, trial and error. Einstein said that doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. But it's interesting that he felt the need to say it because that's what so many of us do. We keep making the same mistake and then wondering why things turn out the same. So it's a slow, slow process. But yogis would say that as things in the world get more and more difficult through the ages, through time, that when there's a rise of what yogis would call avidya, people turning away from spirit, then the incarnation comes. So spirit becomes manifest. God takes form. And then is this wonderful opportunity to learn not just by evolution and the slow, slow process, but to learn by involution. The incarnation comes to give us a helping hand, to let us know what can we do. And so I thought it would be nice to look and see what Jesus came to share. Yogis would say that, or the tradition of the avatar, the incarnation, comes from the East. And in Christianity, very often people think that Jesus was the only incarnation, but that's not what's thought by many other traditions. But let's focus today on what Jesus came to share about how to live from your soul more. He encourages us to live in the presence of God, to find the kingdom of heaven at hand. And it's interesting to me because when you talk about something being at hand, right next to me at my hand, if I put it out, I've got this. It's a Buddhist singing bowl. It's at hand. It's close to me. I'm holding it. It's at hand. And so people very often in Christianity think of the kingdom of heaven being somewhere you go after you die. That's not at hand. At hand is here and now. He talked about us all being children of God. And he tells the wonderful story of the prodigal son, who went off. He took half of his share of the inheritance with his other brother, stayed at home, and he took his share of the inheritance and took it away and wasted it and ended up with nothing, drunk in a pigsty. And so he headed home to his father, and they had a huge, big celebration. And so I can remember when I was a kid thinking, oh, I was the one who stayed at home. And, and that son was a bit miffed. He was a little upset because he felt like, well, they didn't have a big party for me and I was the good kid. But the reality of it is that if you don't leave the kingdom of heaven, you're not mad. And you would indeed rejoice when somebody else arrives back in the kingdom. So Jesus wanted to help us to find our way back to spirit. And he says, confess your sins, seek forgiveness, let God into your heart. He wanted us to stop judging other people. Let go of vengeance, trying to make somebody pay for what they did to you. And in terms of forgiveness, his devotees asked him, well, how often are we supposed to do this whole forgiveness business? You know, surely there's a point at which we say, no, we're done forgiving. We've had enough now. We're not going to forgive anymore. But Jesus said, forgive others again and again. Not 70 times, but 7 times 70. That's almost 500 times. Imagine forgiving somebody 500 times. It's a lot. We get maybe 2 or 3, even 4, and then, or even 100. And it just seems like, well, we've forgiven you enough times now, enough. He said we should love God with all our heart and soul and our mind. And this wonderful love your neighbors as yourself for my sake. That your love of others comes from your love of God. And he said, everybody, especially those in need, those are our neighbors. So I know that you probably know all this. And I thought that we would focus on, from the Lord's Prayer, the wonderful line that says, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And in later translations, that got changed to forgive us our debts, forgive us what we owe, as we forgive what's owed to us. But trespasses, the word comes from the word, it's a translation of a word from the Hebrew, and the meaning of it is interesting for us to realize. Trespasses means false steps, a blunder, deviation from uprightness and truth. So trespasses is this doing something false, doing something that's not truthful, but also in the way that there are signs up that say no trespassers, no intruders, no encroaching, no coming across this line. And so trespassers, they impact, they interfere with other people's lives. And so Guruji was talking about what is the estate that's given to you by God? What is it that is harmed by these intruders, these false things that are happening? How did that are intruding on you? What is this state that you're in? The estate, your estate as a human being. And he says, first of all, it's your life, your right to eat, to exercise, to sleep, to just be alive, having a body and sustaining life. This estate is to think, feel, use your senses. And there are places on the planet where even that is not protected. You're not safe to do that. People have to hide what they think. They have to hide how they feel about things. And they very often have to hide. They can't use their senses in the way that they choose to. Your estate is a place to live that's personal. You have personal space. It's the right to your own humanity and basic goodness without being infringed upon. To find work, to have property and an income, to travel safely, to have savings, to be able to move around, to be able to take care of yourself and your family, to be treated with dignity, to have well-being, to live in peace, in happiness, and in joy. You have the right to your reputation, to safety and security, to actually feel safe. I know there was an article last week, in fact, it was on the news, where they were saying that 1 in 3 women are, what's the word I'm looking for? One in three women are attacked in some way, either physically or verbally, on public transport in this country. 1 in 3. So women don't feel safe on public transport. But as a human being, God put you here to have these things in your life, to have hopes and aspirations, and to pursue your goals, what really matters to you, what matters to your soul. When somebody trespasses against us, it triggers a stress response. And sometimes that stress response causes us to be aggressive, or it might cause us to be retreat, to turn in on ourselves, to pull back from the situation and not feel free to express what we really want to say in that moment. So there's different ways that that stress response manifests, but whichever way it does, it limits our ability, the ability of you to attune with your true self, with your soul. So it's a wonderful thing to ask yourself, what happens to me when someone trespasses against me? And we'll just take a couple minutes. Maybe think about something that's happened to you recently and think where somebody trespassed against you. They caused some harm, some intrusion in your life. What did that do to you? So what happens to us often is that we give up our connection to our own soul. That if somebody intrudes on us, what we do to ourselves is the bigger tragedy. In that instead of being clear, being strong in our connection with spirit, we retreat, we feel weak. That's the real tragedy. We lose that connection. So that's what happens when people trespass against us. And when they trespass, when somebody harms you in any way, the feelings are the things that are the most damaged so many times. I mean, sometimes it's the physical body, but often more than that, it's the feelings. And then we spend an enormous amount of time after that living, not in our connection with our soul, but in these feelings of hurt, of anger, of shame, of guilt, of whatever it is that has arisen, that's been triggered in your being. So it's really important to recognize, do we want to make what's happened to us worse or better? And if we want to make it better, focus on re-establishing your connection with spirit rather than vengeance or fear, or even just letting something go. But what about when we trespass against others? When we do that, we incur many karmas. It's a cause and effect world. What you put out is headed back to you immediately. It may take a while to reach you, and you may be surprised when somebody is unkind or rude or unpleasant to you when you've done nothing to them, forgetting that you incur karmas whenever we trespass against somebody else. The other person may not be able to reconnect to spirit. They may not have that connection. And when we do that to somebody who can't reconnect, it's even sadder in a way. We've violated their minds and hearts, their sense of worth, their hopes and aspirations. So we're just going to consider for a moment what the other person feels like, what victims go through when we trespass against them. So we'll think about that for a few minutes. Think of somebody that you've hurt. What do you think they went through when you were unkind to them or made them feel unseen or unheard? Jai. The next question to ask ourselves is, why do I trespass against others? Just try and be as thoughtful as you can about this. Can you really pinpoint exactly what it was that caused you to reach out and harm another person? You know, what was really going on in your mind and heart at that time? Try. Almost always behind our trespasses lies our desires. You know, even if it's just something like driving on the freeway, the motorway, and you realize that you're angry with the way someone else is driving because it's preventing you from doing what you want to do, either to get somewhere faster or be in a different lane or whatever it is. So actually, driving is a wonderful way to notice our trespasses against others. Sometimes it's just a, mild irritation that somebody's driving too fast or driving too slow. Nobody is going to drive exactly the way you do. So they're always going to be a little faster or a little slower. No one's going to be just spot on. So it's a really unrealistic expectation, a desire that's never going to be fulfilled. Can we let go of it? Can we stop being angry with a total stranger over something that's not that important? And they've not done anything wrong. They've just done something that didn't suit you. So the next question is, why or how do I trespass against myself? It's bad enough that other people trespass against us, but we do such a good job of it ourselves that, we're giving them a good run for their money. So let's have a think about that for a few minutes. Why do you trespass against yourself? And in what ways do you do it? Try. And this is just some things to think about in the way that you might trespass against yourself. Do I trespass against my own time? This most precious of commodities is the currency of your life. The way you spend your life is in time. Imagine looking back at the end of your life and thinking, oh my goodness, all that time I wasted when you could have been doing the things you yearn to do. So do you sabotage your time? And if so, why are you doing that? Can you change it? Right. Do you sabotage the team effort, whether that team be at work or your family, your friends? Do you support the team or do you sabotage the team, trespassing against them and you? Jai. Do you trespass against your own wellness? Do you sabotage it in any way? Jai. Do you sabotage your peace, your happiness, your prosperity? How do you do that and how can you change it? Jai. You sabotage your property. Are you a good steward of the gifts of the universe? Jai. think it's really worth considering this whole idea of forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us. No, it was Jesus who said, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. When they were going to stone Mary Magdalene. When we look at this and we see we trespass against others and we trespass against ourselves, we're probably the worst offender, worse than people on the outside, not always, but certainly sometimes. When we realize, when we're honest and we see what's happening, we get to be someone who knows how to forgive. When someone trespasses against you, if we were saying, why is this happening? They've given up their soul connection. You don't have to give up yours. If you see somebody if somebody's harmed you, if you are sitting in your soul, sitting balanced in spirit, then this does not look like a personal attack in any way, shape, or form. And very often, your response is not one of anger or withdrawal, it's one of compassion. Imagine having compassion for others when they are harming you. And imagine having compassion for yourself when it's you that's doing the hurts. So let's just finish with this. Consider that as a loving parent to this child, your child, what do you wish for yourself? What is going to reconnect you to your true estate? Hi. And remember, this was Jesus's recommendation of how you can best reconnect with spirit, with your beloved, the Lord of your heart, is by learning to forgive others and forgive yourself. Namaste.